Good morning, everybody, and welcome in to another episode of Lobbing Scorchers Kickoff. I'm Ari, that's Nico, and folks, we have a show and a half for you here this morning. The Seattle Sounders, they played a game yesterday versus Minnesota United at Lumen Field, but the match itself almost felt secondary to, if you went into yesterday wondering if the ongoing dispute between the players or the players fight over their share of the Club World Cup prize money, if you were wondering if that was resolved, it is not. It is not resolved, as demonstrated in a pregame protest. The players came out wearing shirts that said Club World Cash Grab. So that was a big story. The Seattle Sounders end up losing the game 3-2. So we will talk about that a little bit. And then we're going to talk some Vancouver Whitecaps because they played the CCC final yesterday, and that did not go especially well. So a lot to get to. Nico, how are you doing in a whirlwind news cycle that we are in right now?
I'm doing all right, Ari. Thanks for, as always, setting this whole thing up. Good morning to all of the audience that's listening to us, I'm sure intensely, with everything that kind of came about yesterday, from the loss to the perhaps some sort of idea that this whole protest might have been a distraction for the team. There were some not so good performances, of course. The Whitecaps thing was incredibly disappointing, to be quite honest. I had a lot of expectations on that team going into a final that I thought they could win. And before the first half, it was over. So, yeah, a lot going on. I think we got to grasp it all, try to figure it out. And I'm sure that the audience is going to be excited to hear it as well.
Yeah, no, totally agreed on the Whitecaps. I mean, I think we were both saying before that game that we felt like we really liked their chances in that game, even with it being on the road against a high quality Liga MX side. With the way they had been playing, I thought they had a great chance in the game. To see them face plant like that was it was unexpected from my end. You know, didn't surprise me necessarily that they lost, but to get 5-0'd in the manner that they did was crazy. But we'll get to that later. Nico, let's not bury the lead. Let's just get right into what everybody's talking about this morning. The players have been in this dispute regarding the Club World Cup prize money. It essentially, the issue at hand is that it comes out to a 90-10 split on the $10 million that goes to the club. And due to a clause in the CBA, the players are capped as money, participation money, to divide among themselves. But clearly, when the CBA was negotiated, it wasn't taking into account the potential of a tournament with this much prize money. So it's a situation where you have a split that the players very strongly believe is unfair, and they haven't been able to have a dialogue about addressing that. And I think that appears to be the primary source of frustration, as far as I can tell, is that they're trying to get someone to the table and they can't do it. So they have resorted to this protest where they come out in the shirts that obviously grab a lot of attention. Nico, I guess, what did you think when you first saw the shirts? And do you think this is the right way to go about advocating for what they're trying to get here?
I don't know if there is a right way to do it, and therefore I'd have to say that I was okay with it. Quite frankly, I get tired and I have little patience for the thought process that athletes are show ponies and they should just be lucky and happy to be getting paid to play a sport, as if organizations weren't becoming very lucratively, economically and financially taken care of because of the product on the field, regardless of the sport. And so for me, if the players are unhappy, and it does seem like, and we've said this before, right? When we first heard about what was going on with Jada put out that first article, and I had told you that I had heard this brewing in the back of behind the scenes, if you will. They should be able to express themselves in a way that creates some sort of traffic to their cause. And I thought they did that. It was pretty creative the way they did it. The design, the way they kind of surprised everybody. Brian Schmetzer had no idea. The club looked like they didn't really have any idea. They came out with the and for the warm-ups, they came out with the shirts, and they walked into the field with shirts. So I think it's great. Again, I don't know if there's a right or wrong way to do it, because it is very particular. This is a very particular situation that we're dealing with. The players, they have a union, they have a CBA, there is a league, but when there is an unforeseen or never seen before sort of tournament, there should be some sort of adjustments to that contract, and to me that's very clear. And that goes in terms of the pay that these players are getting, that at this moment it's $1 million, and for all the players it'll come out to about $33,000 to $40,000, something like that, for each player. And if the players are not happy, then the product on the field won't be the best, and I feel like that's gonna handicap and hinder the entertainment portion, the competitive portion. So it's a bad situation. And let me conclude by just saying this. I'm with the players on this specific matter. I don't know what the rationale is, or why there have not been any talks with the players, but the reality that there are no negotiations with the players at all when we are a couple of weeks from the start of the tournament is unexcusable. At the very least, there should have been a Zoom call with the players, player representatives, the players union, somebody to figure this out. And just the negligence of letting it just try to fade in the background and basically saying, figure it out, you guys are going to have to play, that bothers me. And I feel like that's why the players needed a way to express their unhappiness with how things are going, and the frustration with the fact that talks have not even started. And I think that's the main point of the whole thing, just like you said. And I am totally on the player side when it comes to not understanding why those conversations have not started.
Let's talk about how Brian Schmetzer handled this, because I was thinking about it this morning, Nico, and this has got to be one of the most interesting situations that I've ever seen a coach have to deal with, because he inherently kind of has to work both sides of it. As the coach, you're supposed to have your players back pretty unconditionally, and that doesn't mean not holding them accountable. It just means that you're supposed to go to bat for them, generally speaking, but you're also beholden to the owner, right? And Brian Schmetzer have had and Adrian Hanauer have had a strong working relationship, to the best of my knowledge, but he can't really go out there and go to bat for the players fully, I think, as we saw at his press conference, because he's sort of he's beholden to the other side of it as well. So I just think it's such an interesting curveball for a coach to be thrown. I don't think Schmetz, when he went to the stadium yesterday, had any idea that he was going to end up in the situation that he was in before the game and post game. And I think you could see at his press conference that he tried to be deferential to, like he said, I understand where the players are coming from, but Nico, I felt like he was more like he brought up a couple of he said at the end, like, if you're going to do that, you have to back it up, and you have to show in the game that that whatever's going on off the field like this isn't going to affect your performance. And he said it was something to the effect of like, by losing the game, they opened themselves up to that question and that critique of whether or not their focus was actually fully on the task at hand, which was beating Minnesota United. What did you make of the Schmetzer presser?
I just thought he was frustrated, and I tend to give, not all the time, and depending on how things are said, a pass to a coach that clearly has so many emotions. He's got the emotions of a frustrating game, losing a game almost in the lapse of 8 to 10 minutes, when you, with without necessarily being in control of it, as in you were the way better team. You had control of the ball. You could have done things better. He kind of felt like the game that you could have won that game. So there's that frustration, and there's the frustration of everything that's going on and that I wasn't aware of. The guys coming off with those shirts, you're immediately thinking what the backlash is going to be. And then you got the questions from us, the media members. So at times you're impulsive and you're kind of on the hot seat at the moment in time. And I think Brian has said this several times, where he's like, look, I'm going to have to watch tape again or whatever. And I think in this one, maybe he would want to have some of those comments back, because I do feel like he comes off across almost as blaming that loss on players being distracted. And
it felt like he was implying that.
Yeah, he didn't go
I don't
out
know
there
if that's like
it, but he implied it.
But he implied
no,
it.
exactly. He kind of felt like he implied it, and I don't want to misinterpret what he's saying. I'm just giving you, and I think both you and I have the same opinion on what he said. And I would like to ask him again later this week, when he has time to simmer down and maybe go back and look at his own comments and figure out if he's going to want to retract those or not. But I feel like it was an emotional response, but I did not feel like it was the right way to answer that. If I'm upset and I don't want to get caught up, I'm just going to say no comment, or I'm going to say, look, this is not the task at hand right now. This is not what I'm worried about. And he kind of said that about some of the questions in regards to Club World Cup, right? We're not worried about it. It's not the time. I'm worried about the loss right now and what's coming up with Vancouver. He could have said that, but I feel like he needed to get it out because he was that frustrated. But I feel like it was a wrong decision. I don't think it came across either the way he wanted it or the way he should have came out, of course.
Yeah, but like you also have to remember he's got Hanauer sitting right there. He was at the Hanauer is at the presser, did he not? Making
Yes.
entrance halfway through, and you were in the room.
Point.
You were in the room, right? Did it feel like his demeanor and the types of answers that he was giving changed at all between like what he was saying at the start and when Hanauer came in the room? Noah said something to that effect on our post-game live last night. I wasn't in there, so I don't know, but I guess it's just a pretty crazy situation for him to be in, to have to be addressing that in a situation where you would think that going to bat for unhappy players would be like the default response, but like you got the owner right there who I cannot imagine that Adrian Hanauer is happy about any of this.
Oh no, not at all. And that's a great point. I didn't think about it. I don't remember the exact time when Adrian Hanauer came in, but I remember walking out of that room and me and him kind of crossed paths on that side of the press conference room. And he usually, shakes hands, says hello, and he just was kind of very straight faced and just walked past. So yeah, I'm sure that he's not happy, but it's a valid point. I mean, if your boss walks in your crew meeting where your employees or whatever are unhappy with the situation, and the guy who's either your supervisor or the guy who writes your check walks into the room, it might change your demeanor. And it does make sense because he kind of gradually got more severe with his answers, or a lot more determined to not necessarily back the players up. And maybe that had a lot to do with it, because the last question about whether it was a distraction, that's when he really went off and said or implied that maybe it had something to do with it and that the players should have to back it up. So yeah, it probably had a lot to do with it. But I still don't condone it. I still don't like it. I feel like Brown would have came up on top by either not commenting on it, giving you a diplomatic non-answer, or having the players back. I feel like he chose the wrong one out of all those four possibilities, and it could create some sort of situation with the players where there is some animosity. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to look too much into it, and I don't want to make it seem like it could be a thing. But me, in my opinion, if I heard it and I was trying to share my frustration and do it in a way that everyone saw, and I'm not coming at you, the coach, because I know that it's above your paycheck. It's not something that you can change. But then you don't really have my back. It might make me feel some sort of way.
Anyone who's worked in corporate America can probably relate to a situation where it feels like a panel of corporate oligarchs are getting all of the financial benefit from work that other people are doing. And I think the players' frustration fundamentally is I mean, Nico, a 90-10 split, let's be real. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't. And Stephen Fry made the point that, if a team like the Sounders did happen to make a surprise run and advance further in the tournament, where we're talking about that prize money just going up and up and up and up, and they're still capped at $1 million, that creates a situation that's unfair, just statistically. But I think the counterpoint that we were talking about last night is that it's sort of a bed that got made with this CBA agreement. The CBA, I think, is pretty clear cut on that cap. But then it also didn't take into account the occurrence of a tournament like this, where the prize money is so much higher than Open Cup and Leagues Cup. So,
and that's a valid argument, Ari. That is a valid argument when a contract, regardless of what it is, goes against a situation that's not speculated in that specific contract. It has to be reassessed. It has to be revised, and it has to be adjusted. So it makes sense that the players are saying, look, I understand that we have a CBA that handles everything else, and that's why you're not seeing them complain about Leagues Cup or other tournaments that they have to do. But when it comes to something that is a new format that has a substantially bigger payout and that is a FIFA globally seen tournament, then we should get compensated for it. And the players are going to be taking 3 extra games. They're going to be separated from their families for about a week or so, because they're going to do some sort of camp here within the city. So there are all these things where, if I'm a player, look, what if I get hurt? What if I'm pushing really, really hard and something happens to me? I mean, I should be able to get compensated. So all the people that kind of feel like these are just divas and they should just go to work and not worry, all I have to say is, being an athlete is completely different than any other job. The longevity of it is completely different. The insurance, everything that comes with it, you can't compare it to a 7 to 4 job. I mean, you can't, right? Or an 8 to 5 or whatever. You have to understand that these players are providing a service. They are living their lives completely different to provide you their best of their capacities. And if they're unhappy about something like this, they should at least be heard. And that is the biggest point of this whole discussion and of what the players said in the locker room. And by the way, I love the way that the players showed a united front by standing behind Christian and Stephen Fry. I thought that was fantastic. But the whole point of it is that we have not even heard from anyone. We've just we've been ignored. And that's why those shirts came off. So we are not ignored. That's the way it feels like. That seems to me like the callousness of this whole thing.
Christian Roldan said at that United Players press conference, he said that it has been a distraction and it's something that they felt like it needed to be resolved long before this, and they haven't been able to start the dialogue on it. Did you think it was a distraction during the game itself yesterday? Did it strike you like that?
No, not during the game. I would have to disagree with that theory simply because one has nothing to do with the other. It's quite the opposite. I want to make sure that I show up, win this game, so it fortifies my position as someone that wants to be compensated for X tournament. I mean, not one player that was on that field yesterday was thinking, you know what, I'm too caught up on this matter to worry about the game. No, what happened in the game was circumstantial, and we talked about it before. Minnesota's a very good team that handles their system extremely well, and the Sounders were unable to get clinical finishes and take advantage of the chances that they did create. And when you let a team like Minnesota stay on in the game as much as you did, you get paid for it. And we'll talk about the game a little bit later, but I don't think one goes with the other. The distraction factor to me has nothing to do with it. Players have been training the same, and if anything, perhaps the convoluted schedule and the lack of time in the training field, because it was kind of a very quick turnaround from Wednesday, although you had till Sunday, but there was a day of rest. There was a day of a very quick practice on Friday that both Jeremiah and I were kind of surprised that it was that brief. So maybe that has something to do with it, but it's not about a distraction on any other regard than the calendar itself and maybe the way that it was set up.
What do you think about Brian Schmetzer's quote, though, at the end there, where he said, basically, I'm paraphrasing, but like, if you're going to do that, you have to back it up, and you open yourself to the critique of whether or not your focus is fully there. If you do something like that and then you go out there and lose the game.
I don't like it, but he also makes a good point that we can all kind of conclude is right. If you do something like this prior to a game and the game doesn't go your way, then you're going to be criticized. It's the exact same thing as when a boxer does the Apollo Creed entrance into the boxing match and then he gets lit up. Everybody's going to be saying, you were over here, you brought lions in, and you had, dancers, and, Lil Wayne walked in with you, and then you get knocked out. You're going to be criticized for it. This is obviously a way different situation. I'm just saying that when it comes to anything that you do pre something that doesn't go your way, you're going to be criticized. This one is completely different. But the cause, I'm for. The way they did it, I thought was fine. But they do open themselves up for criticism when the game doesn't go your way, because immediately people are going to go with the easiest thing to blame, which is players weren't concentrated, players weren't united, there was issues with Brian. I mean, whatever the comment is currently about the situation prior, they did open themselves up for it because of the situation. But I do not agree with the fact that it did affect the game. I just think that's, I don't know. I don't want to call it naive either, but I don't think it's accurate. It's an inaccurate representation, in my opinion, of what really happened. I mean, the game just got out of hand from this team in 8 to 10 minutes in that second half.
Where do you think this goes from here, Nico? I mean, this doesn't seem good. I don't know if I've seen a public dispute like this, like to this degree, between every player on the team was wearing one of the shirts. And then the owner is obviously You know, they said they haven't even had any dialogue about it, but he clearly feels as though he's within every right, both legally and ethically, to adhere strictly by the CBA. You know, pay out the $1 million for the players to split, and then the club gets the rest. It's not like he's pocketing it. I think there is like a there's some sort of stipulation, right, that the club has to use that money to like invest back in the club. But Hanauer, I mean, from what I can tell, it doesn't seem like he has any intention of deviating from that. And the players have been unhappy about that. They remain unhappy about that. And it seems like their beef here is with the owner as much as anyone. It's with the league as well. It's with FIFA to an extent. But am I wrong that Hanauer has like the full, what's the word? He could give them any portion of that money that he saw fit, but it doesn't seem like he's going to do that. So how does this get resolved? And just like, what do you make of a situation where you've got like a blatantly public feud between all the players and the owner of the team?
That's a fantastic question. And this is what I know, and it's not official word of any sort. It's just what I've been hearing. This is something that I've been gathering information just for personal purposes, just because Jada took out the story and she had some really fantastic information there. And I haven't felt like I had enough of a green light to do a story of my own. But as far as I can see and understand of the situation, yes, Adrian Hanauer can give them any sort of part of that money, and that's part of the issue. But obviously, the league mandates a certain amount of money, right, because of the whole thing. And if Adrian was to give X amount and Jorge Mas is not doing it for Inter Miami, and LAFC guys are not getting it, is going to create a big problem, because just like the players are a united front, there is a in Liga MX they call it like a pact, right, of like the owners all trying to kind of go in the same route. And I don't think Adrian will want to do that without league permission and talking to the other owners. And so, to your question about is this bad and where do you think this is going, I do think it's bad. And I do think that there is a chance, a possibility, because I see some very determined players that, I don't know, they take the hit for not playing a game, for not showing up. Like,
if they're going to get like that, like
I have heard, and again, this is just me, that it can get like that. And I'm not just talking about Seattle. And this is where things get even more complicated. There had been conversations, and Christian talked about a Zoom conference with Inter Miami, and staff said that they didn't want to distract the LAFC from their important game. But at least that I know, there had been conversations with Inter Miami players who are, and they were thinking about doing some sort of gesture that lays pretty closely to what the Sounders did. The only difference down there is that a lot of the power dynamics are controlled by Messi, Busquets, Luis Suarez, Alba, and he doesn't feel like they have turned just yet, or that's kind of what I've heard. So that's the component or the domino that's going to have to flip to really empower the players. Because if they show a united front, Miami, LAFC, and Seattle, something's got to give. And you could be really affecting the pockets of the tournament, the owners, FIFA. I mean, it's going to be a big problem. But just as picket lines, the united front is what holds it together. If one team folds, then it doesn't work. But if all teams, all the players can say, hey, look, this is unfair. Are you getting this? How much are you getting? Oh, this is what I'm getting. And they could really be transparent about it, and they're not happy. Look, man, it is a bad situation, but it could turn to a point of a game of chicken.
The Inter Miami component of it is new information to me. And that is where it gets, like you said, even more interesting. Because Lionel Messi, Sergio Busquets, Jordi Alba, the Barca boys. I don't think the Club World Cup prize money means all that much to those guys individually. But Inter Miami have a lot of guys on their team that are just normal MLS guys as well, like Fafa and Yannick Bright. This stuff that the Sounders players are talking about affects those guys as well. And I can't imagine that a lot of the guys on Inter Miami, or frankly now LAFC, now that they're in it, I can't imagine they feel fairness and equity of it. So if Seattle, Inter Miami, and LAFC all unite on this, Nico, what if what if Lionel Messi and the Barca boys, what if they come out and say, look, we have solidarity with our teammates, our MLS brethren. If you guys don't address this, if you don't pay us all fairly and make this more equitable for the people who are actually on the field, doing the work, adding the extra games, taking the physical and mental toll of that, we're not going to play. What do you think of that, FIFA?
That would tilt the scale, right? I mean, if there's anyone that has more juice than anyone else, is the Super Friends or the Fantastic Four, or whatever you want to call them. I mean, they are the ones that if they say this is what our stance is going to tilt it one way or the other. So
if Lionel Messi does that, they would have a new deal in place to get everyone paid what they think is fair in 5 minutes. And if that's the case, then they should probably do it anyway. It shouldn't take Lionel Messi doing that to get that outcome. But
yeah, but I mean, common sense in general would tell you that if the product on the field is provided by the players and the players say, no, we won't go, something's got to give, because you got to get the players on the field. Now, obviously, you're going to be dealing with, suspensions and penalties and all kinds of things that could kind of come out of something like that. But if the players are willing to just, feel the heat and they want to test it, and again, it becomes a game of chicken of the league and owners and the players. Who knows what would happen? I feel like the players would eventually get their way, to be honest, because you need to get the players on the field, and you can't start a tournament without 3 MLS teams, all who are hosting. I mean, come on. And again, the Leo Messi factor is even bigger, right? I mean, just Messi says, hey, man, I'm with the players. Although I don't know if he knows anything about the players' union or anything like that, because I don't know.
I doubt it.
Some of the things that I had heard from Inter Miami were all the younger players and things of that nature that apparently were talking about it. But obviously, if Messi gets on board, it just changes things.
Is it really that crazy an idea for FIFA, MLS, and whatever panel of oligarchs are controlling this tournament? Is it that crazy idea for them to just get together and then come out with a statement like, look, the CBA was negotiated one way, but clearly it didn't take a scenario like this into account. We've pooled a little bit of oligarch money, which makes absolutely no difference to any of us because we're all generationally wealthy. We've pulled it together. We got a little fund to make this more fair and equitable, and we're just gonna do that, and let's go with the tournament. Why? I understand there's legal stuff, bureaucratic stuff that's over my head that I don't understand. But when we're talking about people that are this wealthy and these entities that just are profitable beyond all of our wildest dreams, such as FIFA, which the amount of money I think that the players are asking for, does it mean anything at all to an entity like FIFA? I just think that there's a pretty common sense, easy PR win way out of this that wouldn't take any financial weight away from anybody who would be putting up the money. So I mean, if I'm their PR, free advice, I would just do that. Literally, like that money doesn't matter to them. These people like are going to have the generational wealth no matter how much money the players playing in the Club World Cup get, So, I mean, I realize I'm probably oversimplifying this, but in situations like this, I feel like sometimes like it's actually simpler than it might be being made out to be. I don't know. What do you
But
think?
look, even if you're simplifying the situation, and both you and I probably are, the fact that that hasn't already been thought about and that there hasn't been a conversation about it, that is what blows my mind. And you're right. I mean, we've asked both Adrian, I've asked Adrian and no, I think it was just Adrian that day about the way they would use this money moving forward. And he talked about, right, some of it's going to go for future players, it's going to go to the operational budget. You can move that around and you can make your players whole right now. And you're right, kind of nip this in the butt and create a situation where now the players know that you have their back and they can go out there and perform at the best of their abilities, and the entertainment level is going to be better and the situation is going to be better, and you as an organization PR wise are going to look better. But the reality of things is that it's not just Adrian Hanauer. It's going to have to be the other owners and MLS as a whole that should have been already discussed this, should have been told the players, and that statement should come out today. But that's not the case because conversations haven't even been had. And that's exactly ignoring that and just making it feel like it's not a big deal is exactly why the players had to come out with the shirts. And now we get the ball rolling. Now we hear from people. I talked to Michael Boxall after the game, and he didn't really know what was going on, but he understood that the players were unhappy with the terms of this tournament, and therefore they had the right to back that up. And he was all for it. And he had no idea about what was going on. But now that people are starting to figure out and hear what's really happening, I'm curious to see what the level of support in terms of their fellow players across MLS. And I'm not just talking about the people that are in this Club World Cup, just random teams that, like Minnesota, that maybe they're thinking, look, for the future, just like Christian Roldan said, Vancouver might be in this tournament in the future, and all of these teams might be in the future. So we're kind of fighting for everyone. That sort of thing can't create a big union of just players showing support. So all those things are interesting. But going back to your original comment, that statement, that route should have been thought about already. And the fact that the players had to do this show of unhappiness and protest for it to get the ball rolling is counterproductive and is unacceptable by an MLS league that right now has a huge responsibility, because all eyes are on MLS. All eyes are on US soccer. All eyes are on the United States as the hosting country and federation for this huge tournament, the first of its kind, with all the best of the best from every confederation. You should be doing more. You should be more concerned.
We will see what happens from here. I honestly don't even have a good prediction on this one. I'm hoping we get a Hanauer presser soon. I think that's what we need for the content, is the Hanauer presser next. But Nico, I mean, we could talk about this probably all day. But let's talk about the game itself for a few minutes, and then we'll move on to the Whitecaps and CCC. There was a game played. And the Seattle Sounders fall 3-2 to Minnesota United for their first home defeat of the season. A sour end to a homestand, a three-game homestand that started with 2 straight 1-0 victories. But they could not make it 3-0-0 and could not make it an undefeated homestand. Nico, you talked about it a little bit earlier, but we knew how Minnesota United were going to play going into this game. Their tactics are well documented, but I was curious to see how it would play out and how they would execute it at Lumen Field. And it turns out extremely well. It was funny. We talked about how much they're willing to cede possession. And you could tell like right from the jump that if you want to knock the ball around, even in their end, they're going to let you do that. But then once they win the ball, I mean, it's go, go, go. And they are very efficient with those opportunities. They end up hanging 3 goals on Seattle. One of them was a penalty, but that penalty was won in one of those well executed transition moments. I thought their first goal was an excellent team goal. So it kind of just felt like Seattle knew what their game plan was going to be, and still didn't handle it especially well. How did you see that matchup play out in terms of how we thought Minnesota United was going to play and how Seattle dealt with it?
Look, this was going to be a tough game because you either started Stuart Hawkins or you started a Jackson Reagan that has not played for a long time. I thought that you saw that. I didn't think Jay Bell and Jackson Reagan had a very good game. I thought that there was a lot of miscommunication. We got a little bit of Jackson wingback sort of situation, or Jackson central midfielder that was a product of the game. I asked Brian if he meant by design to send Jackson Reagan so high upfield so many times, and he said no,
out wide.
Out wide. That's what I'm saying. It was, Jackson Reagan winger. I mean, wingback. I mean, it was just very, very, very odd, right? But that's what the game gave you, because it was so difficult to break down Minnesota because they're so compact. Their lines are constantly getting back in shape. Their rest defense is great. They're just a very good defensive team. So you needed to do something. Don't know how much that worked, although the best chance in the first half did come from a great Jackson Reagan cross that Paul Rothrock is unable to push in. And it was I think it was a ball that maybe a lot of people think is easy to put.
That's coming in. That's coming in hot. That's coming in.
It's coming in hot. The angle that he had, the quickness to get to that ball, all of it is difficult. So it did come from that, but Seattle just didn't do enough offensively. And in the first half, although it was 30-60 in possession, something to that nature, Seattle did not get the best chances. It was Minnesota who outshot, and not just in shots, but clear chances in that first half that kind of just showed you what Minnesota was all about. You look at that header that hit the post by Tanny, it comes off of a very quick transition moment, and it's one pass, and it's a gorgeous ball by Julian Gressel. Again, I feel like Jay Bell could have done better there, but it's just a great ball as well. Tanny gets on it, and you could see what Minnesota was willing to do and the difficulty that Seattle was having on transition moments. So in the second half, I think that Ramsey did a very interesting move by pulling off Gressel and bringing in Olawani. And he just changed the way they used that right back position, and he gave more pace, and he made Seattle it made Seattle have to defend a lot more on that end. And little by little, they started breaking Seattle down. And once that first goal, that was a very good team goal that didn't come in transition. And Brian kind of talked about that, and he says in that particular goal, we got 7 guys back, and we were just unable to stop Minnesota. And that was a very good goal by Minnesota. But then right after that, things just fall apart. And that's what I continue to say, that Seattle lost this game in a 10-minute period. And it was from that goal moving forward, because then right after, there's a transition moment that leads to a PK. PK gets put away. Then Seattle responds back with a very good Kalani goal. But it just feels like Seattle was trying to get and playing catch up. And that just doesn't play well for this team, especially when Minnesota started to see the gaps and where they wanted to go with the ball. And they end up being the more efficient team. Simple as that.
What is your concern level, if any, about this defense? Because I think I might see one thing a little bit differently than what you laid out there, in that I felt like the attacking performance yesterday was it was good enough to not lose the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I thought the chance generation was they had a lot of good looks, and they end up getting 2 goals. If you score multiple goals in a game at home, you shouldn't lose the game. Like, you should not be shipping 3 goals at home ever. And if it was just this game and they had been at their 2024 level defensively for the majority of the rest of the season, then you could say it's a one-off. But I think there has been a pattern on this team this year of like shoot yourself in the foot type concessions, and I think that was the story of the game yesterday for me, was those individual and collective mistakes defensively that we've seen other examples of throughout the season. I think it's fair to say more than we were seeing that type of stuff last season. Last season, the problem was more the offense, and the defense was pretty much solid the whole time. But this feels a little different. I mean, what do you think of this team defensively right now? And is it, I think we should point out the CB injuries that they're dealing with right now.
That's exactly what
Ymar wasn't playing. Kim Ki-hee is out right now. So I don't know. What do you think?
There are not many center backs in the league that you can say once they're not in that back line, there's a huge decline. And Guillermo Gomez-Andrade is one of them. And it's not an indictment against Jackson or Bell or even Kim when he's in, but Guillermo Gomez-Andrade has such a specific profile of center back in his recovery speed, his physicality. He's led this team and league in interceptions and clearances many a times, many a year. So when he's not there, you can feel it. And in this one particularly, against a guy like Tanny and then eventually Joboa, it becomes really hard to defend. And on the way that Nuhu at times can get caught up or get a little bit too aggressive, it does kind of make things break down when not all of those guys that have built some continuity are on the field at the same time. And a lot of it was that in this one. I also didn't think that the pivots rise to the occasion. I thought they were fine. But when the center mids for this team, the holding mids, play above their level, Seattle plays above their level. But when they're not able to influence the game at a higher level, Seattle has some issues. And I think you saw that here, particularly, honestly. And even when in the second half, Seattle did start to create more offense and kind of push back Minnesota a lot more, it seemed like it was very quick, vertical, and a direct play by Minnesota that got this team into trouble once again. And that's difficult to figure out because you start thinking, is it just the fact that certain players are not there, or is it just the fact that you were chasing the game? So because of how this game played out, I would be mindful about not making too many conclusions on the defensive end because, again, soccer's circumstantial. And in this one, the way the game played out, the injuries and the opponent you had in hand have to be taken into consideration. So I didn't think that they were terrible. I thought they limited Minnesota a lot in specific moments of this game. But at the end, it wasn't good enough. And the offense was the one that, in my opinion, wasn't able to make plays. And Brian said that. He said, look, to be fair to those guys, speaking about the defenders, because I asked that question kind of, he said, we didn't make enough plays. The offense didn't do enough. And he's right. In that second half, I think Brian did everything he could to make something happen. He brings in a second forward in the Rosario. He brings in Georgie Manungu. He brings in Ryan Kent. He's trying to get back in this game. He pulls up Nuhu and brings in Reed, a more attacking player, and you were still unable to break down this Minnesota team. And I think it was because you didn't make enough plays. It's that simple. Daniel Masovsky was pretty limited all game long. He didn't get a lot of services either. I thought Ryan Kent was once again a little bit impatient. He created a couple of good moments, but not good enough. I thought Pedro de la Vega, going back rewatching the game this morning, I thought that he was very active, but not sharp enough. Same thing as Paul. Paul was getting into the right position, but you just weren't putting the ball away. And that ends up being the reason why you can't control the tempo, you can't control the game, and eventually you lose this one.
Yeah. Pedro de la Vega does get the nice assist to KKR. It was good to see KKR get on the score sheet again. But Nico, I think it's worth talking about Ryan Kent right now because it feels like the last few weeks he's been spinning his wheels a little bit. Like you said, I think impatient is the right word. Teams are sending doubles and triples at him, and it feels like it's not just him. It's like the team now that the tactic of like give it to number 77 and let him do cool stuff, and it's gonna probably result in a goal. Now that hasn't been working as much, they haven't kind of like adjusted to other teams' adjustments. Or at least that's kind of how I see it. How do you think that they can get him back to being? I don't think I expect him to like look like the best player in the world like he did against St. Louis, like week in and week out. But it does seem like they need to figure out how to adjust and maximize him so he's like more towards what we saw at the beginning than the last few weeks, where it's not like he's been bad. Like he still has some like really awesome moments every game. He could have had another assist in the game where the one where Georgie was offside. So there's still good stuff, but like how do they get back to maximizing him?
I wanted to ask that question to Brian, and he hasn't quite given me not the answer that I wanted, but I don't think that he's put enough thought into it. So I will ask it again. But I asked it after the San Diego game, I believe, and then I asked it during the week, but I haven't got the answer. I really do think that, just in my opinion alone, he needs to diversify his game and understand that at times playing simple and playing more 1-2s and being the first part of those triangles and those diamonds and making that run after that is going to be more important than maybe even taking on players. And I do feel like he's got to build a better rapport with his teammates, because there are times where he is pretty open in space and he doesn't get the ball when he wants. And I'll go back to what Danny Musovsky did this season and was talking to Paul Rothrock, talking to Albert. This is where I'm at. Where should I be at? I don't know if that's there yet with Ryan Kent, because he's a newer player. So can he build that? Can he do that extra film time with specific players so he's getting the ball where he wants it? But mainly, he's got to understand that teams are not going to let you beat them, right? If 77 is on, I'm going to do everything I can so he doesn't beat me on that side. You saw it with Portland. You saw it not as much with Dallas, but you ended up seeing it in this one as well. I mean, San Diego did a good job on him. So because of that, you have to be able to change up your game and make sure that, because he's not a one-trick pony. He's an excellent player, very talented. But I feel like, obviously, as he's coming into this new group, he's relying on his attributes that are at his highest level, which is dribbling, pace. But when those things are not working, having a plan B is what I haven't been able to see him do. So I think that's the answer to the question, is diversify your game, make it simpler, make it quick, drop that ball, make a different run, and make it a lot more difficult and not be as predictable as perhaps he has been. And I don't want to be overly critical, and I want to make that very clear. I'm not being overly critical. I'm just kind of throwing ideas of what I've seen him struggle with in those games where he hasn't been as influential and as dynamic as he's been in the past.
Derek, thank you for the gifted membership. Appreciate you, man. You're the man. Nico, let's talk about the Vancouver Whitecaps, because that is the Seattle Sounders' next opponent. They'll be heading up to BC Place this weekend. for that game. But they also just played the CONCACAF Champions Cup final last night. After this, I went right home from Lumen Field, sat down. I was like, all right, let's watch the Vancouver Whitecaps. I think they might actually win CONCACAF Champions Cup. Best team in MLS all season. One of the best CCC runs I've ever seen from an MLS club. I think they have the quality. I think they have the mentality to at least, I wasn't feeling like guaranteed that they were going to win, but I was very much at least expecting a hard fought competitive game. And Nico, it was not that. It was not that. That is about as bad as I've ever seen a team get beat. It was just across the board. They conceded the first goal 7 minutes into the game, and from there it was just absolute one-way traffic. Cruz Azul made the Whitecaps look like just a shell of what they've been all season, which is a team that beat two Liga MX teams on the way to the CCC final, beat Lionel Messi and the Barca boys to clinch their spot, all while playing at a 2.3 whatever points per game pace in league play. To see them get run like that, I was not expecting that. I mean, we both were talking about how we thought that the Whitecaps were going to win, and I don't think that that feeling was off base. That was based on, they earned that, based on how they've been playing all season. And I'll just say from before we talk about how it relates to the Sounders, from my perspective, it just looked like they weren't up for it from the jump. It looked like a club that just was not fundamentally ready for a moment like that, a game like that. How does Nico? How did that happen? What happened?
I need to watch the whole game again, because that's when I make my best conclusions, when I watch a game a second time, and I will do that. But on a first look, it felt like a team that wasn't up for the challenge of the big moment. And this specific format, it's very difficult because you get one game, you don't get that home leg, right? That in a final could be important. We saw how important it was for Seattle to manage that game at exact same place, at Estadio Universitario. So in this one, self-inflicted wounds is what really got Vancouver down in the slumps early, right? By the 20th minute, they were already down 2, both out of mistakes that we haven't seen Vancouver make. Coming out of the back, building out of the back. I mean, you cannot give those sort of ill-advised, negligent passing balls in your own third against a team like Cruz Azul, because they just have too much talent. And once that scoreline hit 2-0, Vancouver kind of fell apart. And it's something that they had been doing the opposite of throughout MLS play. Composure, feeling like they're in every game, feeling that they could score regardless of where they started, because they've done it. They've done it in MLS play. They've been down 2 and been able to come back. And in this one, it just felt like the game was too big for them. And once that 2-0 scoreline came across, too many mistakes, too gappy, getting too high forward. The discipline of a team that kind of excelled when it came to understanding where each player's at and positionally being very disciplined, all of that went out the window. And Cruz Azul took advantage of it. They pounced on the opportunity the exact same way they pounced on the Sounders when similar things happened in that second leg game against the Seattle Sounders. So credit to Cruz Azul. It was unfortunate, and it tells you how difficult it is to show up to this sort of game in that sort of moment behind enemy lines. And it has a lot to do with the mentality of the game. But all in all, I think Vancouver, and I said this on a tweet, everything that could go wrong went wrong, and it went wrong in the first half. And once you put yourself in that situation, it's almost impossible to get out. You could not go into the half losing by that many goals, because it's sentenced. The game was sentenced in the first half.
the Sounders at least put up more of a fight than that against that team. Like,
Yeah, at least
they
they made it
did,
to the second half.
yeah, like they ended up at 4-1, but it was 2-0 in the 80th when Muth scored, right? And then there was that brief like 5 to 6 minutes like towards the end of that game before Cruz Azul got the 2 late goals where it was still up in the air. So like, yeah, Seattle got bounced by Cruz Azul too, but like not in as undignified of fashion as the Vancouver Whitecaps just did, especially because of you know, just everything on the line for their club in that moment. Like, I think there would be I personally, if they lost that game in a more competitive fashion than that, I think it's like a tip your cap, GG's, better on the day. But like the extent of the self-destruction was just I mean, I think it might be a little while before they can fully recover from that. DJ, thank you for the $5 super. Appreciate you, man. Hear me out. Whitecaps got spanked, but I truly believe it had more to do with playing in Mexico than being outplayed. I mean, I don't know, because they went to Mexico twice already and had some of the best wins that they've ever had, you know? So it's just hard for me to kind of pin exactly how it went off the rails to that degree. What do you think, Nico?
I think that the Mexico opponent was big in terms of it being one leg game and not having that vote of confidence of strategizing for 120 minutes and 2 games and how we're going to deal with certain situations than anything else. You're right. They beat top Mexican teams in Mexico. They beat Saprissa away as well. I mean, these are all teams that are excellent when it comes to this sort of tournament. But to me, when you give up, if you go back and you look at goal 1 and goal 2, they come in the exact same fashion. And it's not like Cruz Azul is doing an amazing job pressing. It's just about nervosism and not putting enough pace on the ball. That give back to Ocampo, it's a medicine ball. You cannot put that ball in that specific area of the field knowing you got a guy running onto you. So that's why they did get outplayed. I don't want to say they did not get outplayed, but I feel like a lot of this game was self-inflicted wounds, and it was a team that seemed too nervous to execute the game they've been executing all year long, and he went off the hinges. It's kind of similar to the 5-0 beatdown the PSG put on Inter Milan. Things just got away from the team. This is a similar factor where things just started compounding, and all of a sudden you're down 3-4 goals before the half, and it was just too much to bear. But a lot of it, to me, has to do with a quality Cruz Azul team that was opportunistic and that they were able to just not even pressure you too much into mistakes, but waited for you to make the mistakes and took advantage of them. It was a very simple game for Cruz Azul. I mean, I think that's the frustrating part, is how easy Whitecaps surrendered the game. They gave them the game. And this is something that Jasper Sorensen has been so good at doing, is coming up for those big moments. But in this one, too many mistakes. Too many mistakes.
Andres Cubas has been a very good player for them. And he had about as bad it is about as individual game as like I've ever seen a player have. It was a shocker. Like you mentioned, the giveaway on the first goal, it's just it's needless. You know, like you can't make mistakes like that in a game like that and expect to have any chance at all. And he made like a lot of them, at least 2 of which directly led to goals. And they were just so far from behind the 8 ball from the very beginning. And it went off the rails. Wade, thank you for the $5 super. Appreciate you. He says Caps had a midweek game with its half of their team rotated from the first goal to the last. I think they looked like they had tired legs. Just sad. Yeah, I think they're there's an element of the travel demands and the fixture congestion and the fatigue factor and all that plays into it, and I can understand that playing into a negative result. I can't quite wrap my head around how it went that poorly. Like, that was just I don't know, like, it's not what I expected from a team that's been playing. Honestly, the 2025 Whitecaps been playing at about as high a level as you're going to see an MLS team play at. I mean, they're over 2 points per game for a reason. They made it to the CCC Final for a reason. But I mean, that was just self-destruction. There's no two ways about it. Nico, they also happen to be the Seattle Sounders' next opponent. So let's talk about that real quick before we get out of here. The Sounders will be going to Vancouver on Saturday for the Whitecaps' first game since this CCC final debacle. They're also going to be missing, I believe, 9 players for international duty. Brian White and Sebastian Berhalter are off to go to the U.S. for the Gold Cup, and then they have a bunch more who are also going to be missing this game. So not only are they dealing with like the emotional toll of one of the most excruciating CONCACAF Champions Cup losses you can imagine, they're also going to be doing so heavily shorthanded. I guess we were talking about this on the post-game live last night, but do you think this is a situation where Vancouver is going to channel this as motivation and play angry and be looking to sort of take it out on their next opponent, which happens to be Seattle? Because that's what we had a caller saying that they thought that that's what was going to happen. Man, I almost feel like when you lose a final like that, it almost is like sometimes it shell shocks you more than it motivates you, at least in the short term. Like, if they lost that game any sort of competitively and they looked anything at all like their normal selves, I would think it's more likely that it ends up being like a fuel to the fire situation. I think it's equally, if not more likely, that they're just sort of stunned and not fully past what happened yet. I mean, how do you think that loss is going to affect the dynamic of this next game against Seattle?
I think it's a very low pressure game, to be honest. So I'll go the opposite, perhaps, on what you guys are implying here, and it's simply because you have too many circumstances that say, "Hey, look, whatever we do against the Sounders is fine," because Kubas is going to be gone, because White's going to be gone, because Vita is going to be gone. You mentioned 9 players. The core of this team is going to be gone. You're coming off of a short rest. Nobody's expecting you to come out here and just ran over the Seattle Sounders. So to me is a very low pressure game that could actually help Vancouver. And you say, hey guys, let's just get out here. We do want to show up for our fans that have been here, that are disappointed. But at the same time, it's really a win-win because we're going to go in with a full rotated team after playing, 90 minutes in Mexico City. Just go out there and play. So for me, it's going to be very low pressure. I think that Jasper will be up to the task. We've seen this heavily rotated team put a lot of teams into difficult positions this MLS season. But I think that the situation is advantageous to Seattle. And anytime that you're going against a Whitecaps team that is not going to have almost the entirety of their midfield, their top goal scorer, I mean, you should be able to go in there and at least get a result. At the very least, go to BC Place and get a result. So to me, the pressure's kind of on Seattle, to be honest.
I mean, I see what you're saying, because anytime you're playing a team that's that shorthanded, you think it might tilt the scale. And then also just the fact that Vancouver are walking wounded now, it does sort of make you feel like it's not, for me, a Cascadia road matchup, especially against the Whitecaps team that has been playing as well as they have, this year. They've been the best team in the league. That's one where if you end up leaving with a point, I think you take that. I almost feel like in this situation, the outlook changes because of all the variables that we've been talking about, in that you're not guaranteed a 3-point result, but it's not necessarily like a normal road game where a cagier draw is not what you're shooting for, but something that you would take standing up. I almost feel like that would be a disappointment if that's what happens to Seattle in this game. Nico, looking at this game coming off this loss to Minnesota, what do you want to see from the team as far as bouncing back and sort of getting back to the form that they've been in really since over the last 8-9 games? I think they were 6-2-2 over their last 10 before the defeat yesterday. What do you want to see in this game to sort of to get back to that form?
I think you need a get right game. You need to be on the front foot. You need to show that exciting soccer that we saw against Nashville. You gotta be able to put a defensive performance and a gritty performance in lapses that you had against San Diego here at home. You need your top talent to really show up to play, and you need to be more decisive. I think that that's something that Seattle was so hard to watch against the Minnesota here at home. Against Minnesota United, there was such a lack of decision making, and it just seemed like Seattle could not get any sort of danger when they were on the ball, and they had guys in the right places, and they were moving the ball well, and the passing patterns were where they wanted. There was always either a non-decision or a bad decision. So you need to correct that in this game against Vancouver. And although, like you said, I'm not sitting here telling you guys that Seattle needs to get 3 points and that 3 points is the only way, but at least in terms of style of play and your concepts, your principles, those need to show up again, because against Minnesota, I didn't see them. The Dallas game, those first 20, 30 minutes where Seattle was really high tempo, really getting going. I know that game kind of went south after that, or at least in terms of like it being a well-played game. But those 15 minutes, I want to see something similar from Seattle. You need to go in there with a lot of intensity, quick restarts, getting the ball forward, trying to get Ferreira involved if he's back. Obviously, he just had a daughter, so we'll see. He should be back. Pedro Vega, Ryan Kent will start in that one without a doubt. So getting him going, all of those things is what Seattle needs to do to get right against Vancouver. Defensively, I would expect Jackson to have one more game under his belt. He'll be better in that one. Jay Bell hopefully can create a better rapport with Jackson, because I thought that when Stuart Hawkins came on, Jay Bell looked a little better. And it was weird because Jackson Reagan is supposed to be the better center back, the experienced center back, but it just seemed like Stu and Jay Bell had a better rapport. So can he create that with Jackson Reagan, right? So all those things I feel like Seattle's going to have to figure out. Nuhu's likely going to be gone. So is that going to be Reed Baker-Whiting on that side? Or, how are you going to set up that there in Vancouver? But to me, the biggest thing that Seattle needs to do is figure out their offensive fluidity, their transition play, and getting enough guys crashing the box and really creating a lot more opportunities, because they cannot have another offensive snoozer like they did in that first half against Minnesota.
How do you think they line it up in attack? Like you mentioned, Jesus Ferreira was not available for the Minnesota game because he was having a baby. Congratulations to Jesus Ferreira, but should be back for this game. Do you think they do the thing where they start him in the wide pocket and start Moose up top? Do they ease Moose back into it as he continues to gain fitness coming off his injury? What do you think's the right way to approach it from that standpoint?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Albert has been playing a lot of minutes, so, do you rest him and maybe drop Ferreira back a line and see how that works? But I really do think that Seattle needing a get back right game, they're going to go with what they have. And to me, it's going to be Ferreira, Kent, Albert, and Pedro. That's your front four, in my opinion, going into this game.
What do you want to see from De La Vega? He got a nice assist in this Minnesota game.
Yeah,
so that was good. That was good to see, getting on the stat sheet again. And it feels like he's coming into his own a little bit over the last couple weeks, but we're gonna find out if he can really actually become like this big impact player that we're all hoping for. But doesn't this kind of feel like a big game or stretch of games for him?
it does, absolutely. And it goes back to the confidence part of it. I think that he has grown in confidence, and he's grown in his ability to take on players. What I want to see more of is him putting himself in good enough positions to get shots on goal. He has such a great weapon when it comes to his mid-range shots, but it doesn't get used enough because his shots for some reason are usually blocked. And I don't know if it's because there are always so many numbers behind the ball when he's been able to get on those spaces. But I would like to see him being more aggressive off the ball, so he is in prime scoring positions and can finish on goal. In transition as well, and this is not against Pedro. I feel like Seattle at times underestimates perhaps his ability to just explode and get to balls behind the back line. And it's been multiple times where I feel like you could just throw the ball up forward, drop it above the defensive line, and allow Pedro to get to those balls. And it doesn't happen consistently enough. So I want to see him more aggressive on his off-ball runs and putting himself into better positions to finish in front of goal. So the creativeness, the willingness to take players on, the one-on-one dribbling skills, the passing, all those things have been displayed in, like you said, this great run of form that he's starting to get to after that injury. But to me, being more goal dangerous is what I would like to see out of Pedro de la Vega.
Absolutely. Nico, I think we can call it right there for this episode of Lobbing Scorchers Kickoff. Thank you all, as always, for tuning in. This was an interesting one. We have a storyline going on in Seattle Sounders land that I have certainly never seen before. It's a unique one for all of us who follow this team, cover this team, and obsess over this team on a day in, day out basis. Not many other clubs have been in a situation like this with a public dispute between the players and the owner. So if nothing else, there's novelty to it. Doesn't seem good though. Nico, anything that you wanted to, any last takes or anything that you wanted to plug that you've got working with Pulso or Sounder at Heart or anything before we get out of here?
No, first I do want to congratulate again Jesus Ferreira for having his baby girl. He told me his daughter's name and I totally blanked on it, but excited for the other member of the Sounders family, like Brian said. And go check out Michael Bachfeld's interview on Pulso Sports. That was very interesting. He, talked about the All-Star game, and he wasn't necessarily excited about the All-Star game and being a guy that can make that roster or not. He talked about Minnesota's form and facing the Sounders. He gave a couple of sound bites about the protest and things like that. So go ahead and check that out at Pulso Sports. We also have the entirety of the 20 minutes of the Seattle Sounders Christian Roldan and Stefan Fry talking about this entire situation. And then on Friday, of course, we're going to have our What We Learned This Week with Jeremiah Shen. That I have a feeling that it's going to be pretty eventful, because I think that this week there's going to be a lot of information either behind closed doors that now that the cat is out of the bag and I was kind of trying to stay out of it, I'll probably start reporting a lot on. Injury wise and how things are kind of playing out, the dynamics of the training Field, right? That looked any different? All those things we'll talk about on Friday, and then on Thursdays as well. Soccer Down Here, SDH. Go ahead and check that out as well. You can find me on X. You can find me on Blue Sky, and I appreciate you having me on as always, Ari.
Absolutely, man. It's gonna be an interesting week. We're gonna be covering all of it, so stay tuned. We'll catch you guys soon.